They have their own wells, and they ran 1 million gallons a day through their process plant. They still have water out there, and they're negotiating, I think, with Millview Water for Millview to take over those water rights. So there's some water right there that would help development.
Mr. McGowan.
Well, the law requires that development not go forward until it has water to supply that development. Now, there's always some question. For instance, the Masonite wells, there's a lot of questions about whether that entitlement is still there, particularly for the wells that are classified as underflow because they haven't been put to beneficial use for more than 5 years. There is one well that is said to be percolated groundwater that might provide a viable source.
Well, if you go back and look at the history from what Mendocino County did and the rest of the water agencies who looked at the Masonite wells, the one well is definitely not part of the underflow. And that was evaluated when they cut the lake down to 85 CSF. That water source that Masonite has, working with the State Water Resources Agency and Regional Water Quality Control Board, has a right to turn around and use that water. They have a source of water. We were looking at 700 gallons per minute at that well. We were looking at buying it for one of the water districts, and so was the other one, and so was Mendocino County. We just didn't do that at that time because it wasn't an urgent need to spend the money everybody felt for the county element anyway. But water for out the rest of the housing industry and the rest of us, we do have some water there, but we need to find the off-storage supply and locations to do it. And it does have to be done in an orderly manner.
Ms. Clifton.
We need an absolute when it comes to our capacity, and that's planning for drought years. I heard you say, you know, there are studies that we could put together. Well, we should put together the districts and put together the studies and see what else we need to look into so that we know what our capacity is. When it comes to development, like I said before, I don't want to build commercial, or domestic and commercial to the detriment of our industrial and agricultural viability. So we must make sure that we know our capacity and allocate it to all uses so that we have a balance in this community.
It's true that the board previously looked at the Masonite wells, and I really wonder if it's truly a viable source, and they took a very in-depth look. Why didn't they go forward? Because if it was a proven source of water, that would have been the most cost-effective way to secure our water future. The fact that they didn't go forward indicates to me there was probably some question about the reliability of the water right.
Rebuttal was the price. It was the price. I can tell you that for a fact.
And do you know the price?
I could probably go back and dig through the records, but I do know it was the price.
It would have been a lot cheaper than raising Lake Mendocino.
I'm not arguing about that now, and we pointed that out, and they decided not to do it.
Okay. I have another question. I've got another one on development here. The candidates make opposite predictions about the impact of Mendocino crossings, positive or negative. What evidence does each of you give for your predictions? Please cite them. Mr. McGowan gets to start on that one.
I thought I started the last one.
You did? I'm sorry.
I think
well,
you
then,
did, didn't you?
I think Mr. Mulheron started the last one.
It's your turn.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Sure.
I'm giving it to you.
I don't mind going.
But would you repeat the question, though?
I said water,
okay.
and then they went water again.
The candidates make opposite predictions about the impact of Mendocino crossings, positive or negative. On what evidence do you each base your predictions? Please cite.
The developers for Mendocino Crossings propose to construct 500 to 700,000 square feet of retail development on that site. Every economic study that I've seen, and there's at least 3 of them, including one commissioned by DDR, show that there is not a need in all of Mendocino County for that much retail development through the year 2025. So the new shopping center, retail center, if it's built, will do very well. The new retail center always does well. I've lived here all my life. I've seen it. As the new one comes online, the oldest one that's still semi-viable goes under or falls into decline. So The new business to support this retail center will come at the expense of existing businesses, whether it's in downtown Ukiah, the unincorporated area, the Pear Tree Center, Willits, Fort Bragg will all suffer as a result of this development. We will have blighted areas in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Mayfield.
Well, I'm not against or for. I've been looking at the data. I've seen what one side says and what the other side says, and they both have a lot of holes in them. The information that needs to be looked at and seen hasn't been brought forth or brought about yet. We need to look at all the facts and all the figures and everything else to make the right decision. The project itself, though, from what I saw, was going to be built in phases. It will only be able to afford to be built out to whatever the economy is allowing it to do. The whole thing about making a decision for this kind of project is you got to have all the facts. You got to know all the environmental, water, sewer connections, traffic control, everything else for either side. You can't make that decision unless you have that information. Presently, I haven't had that information, and when I get it, then I'll be able to give you a decision.
Thank you. Ms. Clifton.
I don't have the facts all lined out because I haven't put a whole lot of energy into debating this issue, but it is very clear that when Jim refers to the $2 million that we would, the leakage, that leakage figure is inaccurate. It's based on people who are in Lower Lake are all of a sudden going to not drive to Santa Rosa anymore when their jobs are there. It's based on people in Southern Humboldt not going to Eureka when they're more culturally connected that direction, and everyone going 128 from the coast is going to stop doing that, and I don't think that is fair assessment, nor do we know what shops are being planned out there to even plug these leakages. So the study is biased to the developer, and we have sufficient commercial land to meet our county's 20-year anticipated commercial needs already existing in Ukiah. So it's going to be to the detriment of our presently zoned areas if we upload more commercial and lose this our industrial opportunities. Thank you.
Well, Heron.
Okay, the $200 million, or whatever number it is.
I meant.
Yeah, it's currently going to Santa Rosa. If that stayed in our valley, what that does is, and I think Mark Schuman at his Citizen U presentation said a third of that goes to restaurants, so we can't count it as retail. Well, if $50 million stayed in this valley and went to our local restaurants, I've got to think that they would appreciate that. And if people came over from the coast that had a little disposable income, because we live in a fairly depressed valley, we have a lower than average mean income for the state of California here in the valley. So if we could bring in people that had some disposable income, imagine what that would do for our boutique shops and our galleries and our restaurants. And I think that to take that money and keep it in this valley and circulating among our businesses is going to be a boon to the downtown, and it's going to be a boon to the whole economy here.
It's not necessary to rezone the Masonite site in order to stop some of that leakage. We have over 1 million square feet of land already appropriately zoned for retail development. Costco could come here tomorrow. They did have a letter of intent with a local developer. They'd been working closely with him and the city of Ukiah for a couple of years. They suddenly pulled out of that deal, and we're talking to DDR. Once we know Masonite stays industrial, Costco will most likely start looking at their other options.
Rebuttal. 25 years ago, the mayor, Ted Feibush, had a town hall meeting and said, we're going to bring in all these high-paying, clean jobs to our new Redwood Industrial Park. 25 years later, it's a shopping center. It didn't happen. It's just not going to work. We've got a lot of reasons why it's not going to work. The population is 25 years older. We don't have a work-ready workforce. There's a lot of reasons. We don't have workforce housing. We need an economic stimulus. The city council has rezoned all that industrial land commercial, and they did it for a reason.
Rebuttal. I've got a curiosity question, and I just have to ask this.